Welcome one and all to Archant Towers, Wednesday evening, just after 7 o'clock. Three likely lads here for your Norwich City pleasure. Paddy Davitt, Dave Freezer. Both of us had the pleasure, should that be the dubious honour, of being at QPR on Easter Monday, so I'm sure we'll get into that as and when. And head of sport to my right, Chris Lakey. Just thought we'd chew the fat, really. It's been an eventful few days. Not all of it good, it must be said. So obviously we're going to be here for the next sort of 40-45 minutes before the main business of the night, Manchester City and Liverpool, take place. We know we're the warm-up act for that.
I hope there's no police between here and Aylsham, because I'm having one in a minute.
So yeah, this man isn't happy because he thought we were going to do this about 6, so he'd be home and with his feet up in front of the telly before Jurgen set about Pep. But the sacrifices we have to make. So so we're going to be here next 40 minutes or so. We'll be guided obviously by you guys out there. Please get your comments in, your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. But I guess the first place to start really is just an overview of Easter. I'm going to turn to Dave and get his thoughts. I'll give my thoughts. No points, 6 goals conceded, 1 scored, and all in all, a pretty depressing little spell. And we saw the reaction on social media. We're at the ground, obviously, on Monday night, but it was very clear. In fact, to be honest, Dave, I remember you saying Dave was doing a live blog, and you said even doing the live blog, the tone of the comments were pretty critical, and it's continued in that vein for the last couple of days. Obviously, it's calmed down a little bit now, but the sense is that these 2 games maybe for many fans are a little bit a breaking point. Would that be fair to say? Do you think, mate?
It's certainly pushed people's patience to the nth degree to a certain extent. I mean, I was surprised by quite how wound up people were, but I can sympathise with why people are so annoyed, because it's a limbo state now, really, isn't it? We're just waiting for the end of the season. There's not a great deal Daniel can do. I think on Monday we really saw a team that he didn't want to field. But I know they had 2 games in 4 days after the Fulham game on Friday, but that felt like there were players out there who maybe their futures aren't clear, maybe their motivation isn't at its fullest, maybe Daniel wasn't fully happy with the team that he was able to field, and that was reflected in that second half performance, because it really wasn't good enough, and it really wasn't the performance that I'd have said on the whole we've seen in 2018. Certainly they've been far more stable and together, and people like Dennis Srebeni and El Hernandez have started to show flashes of what they can do, and it felt like a backward step. So now everybody's thinking, are these next 6 games going to be the same, or worried that they're going to be the same? And if they are, then we're in for a miserable old time, aren't we? But it's now threatening to reach the point where it could damage next season, where any credit that Daniel and Stuart Webber have got in the bank could be threatened, because they can't continue like that. It's not good enough. But for how do you motivate players? Villa come on Saturday and they're going for top 2. Sunderland next Tuesday, they're battling against relegation. Cardiff looking they could get promoted at Carrow Road. Preston chasing a playoff spot. How do you motivate this group of Norwich City players to the same levels that the opposition are going to be?
Yeah, well, that's a fairly depressing thought when you were going through those teams and what they've got to play with. I'll just follow on and then we'll get Chris's thoughts. Chris was at Fulham with me on Good Friday, so you saw the start of the Easter decline. But yeah, you're right. I think 1 win in 10 now isn't good enough. And yes, everybody knows it's a work in progress. And Stuart Webber, and we'll get into this, the interview he did before the game at QPR with Radio Norfolk, he basically stressed again, it's a young squad, or it's guys who are coming to England for the first time. They're going to need time. So by implicit in that, for me, was don't judge us now, judge us next season and beyond. But in order to buy a bit of leeway, they need to show more than they're doing at the minute on the pitch, both ends of the pitch now, because the goals against column is alarming. 13 goals shipped in 5 games now, and all season long they've not been able to score goals, and that's continued depressingly. This back end of the season now is all about bouncing in with a little bit of momentum and a little bit of confidence that they can have a positive summer in the window, and then you attack next season from the off. If it continues in this vein on a downward trajectory and they get to the summer, there's not going to be any momentum there. The fan base are just basically going to be waiting to see what happens in the summer. And then if it doesn't start very well to start next season, then I think it's fair to assume that the pressure would be on.
It's going to be pent up then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So there is a lot to play for. maybe not materially in terms of the league status, but in terms of the mood music around the club and the fan base. Chris, you were there at Fulham. You don't obviously see too many of the games in the flesh, but I think most people felt that was two sides maybe heading in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, I think you've got to stay in credit with your supporters, and I think they're hovering above this sort of breadline at the moment. Fulham, good side, no doubt about that. What disappointed me, it just seemed to me that they handed the initiative to Fulham straight away. Yep. There was no, look, this is Carrow Road, there's 26,000 people here who support us. There wasn't a feeling that they were all in it together. Let's have a go at Fulham, just prove what we are. Because, again, going back to the credit with the fans, they've got to keep the fans on side for the rest of this season because there's so much optimism, or there was. Yeah. Optimism level's gone down for next season. Yeah. This is what it's all about. It's getting Norwich City fans with you on the journey. Now, on Friday, as you say, I don't often see him working-wise in the flesh. And I was boiling when I left Carrow Road because I was angry at what I'd seen. If I were paying, and thankfully with our job we're very, very lucky, but if I was paying for that, I'd be annoyed because I didn't get a reward. I don't think I saw... Melissa Rudd writes a really good column for us, and I couldn't have agreed more with what she said about Ivo Pinto legging it down the right flank, gets level with the Fulham area, looks across, Dennis Shreveni's there. Now, it's a toss-up whether we were closer to the ball than the next Norwich City player. Nobody's supporting him in attack, and it annoyed me that the cautiousness of it all. Yeah. When I thought, again, you get into that psychological thing that you stamp an authority. And by not being aggressive, they weren't stamping an authority on the game. I know Fulham are good. I know there are dangers, inherent dangers in piling everybody forward.
Especially against Fulham.
Yeah, but there wasn't an attitude to me that said, we can win this game. Yeah. As soon as the game started, you thought, they ain't going to win this. Well, there were nice points, but they weren't going to win it.
Well, let's develop that point, because that flows into one of the hot topics that is clear for all to see since the QPR game, and that was the comments from Stuart Webber about the brand of football, the style of football. Now, I've listened to the clip in question. You've listened to it in the last hour or so. Without getting into the whys and wherefores of social media and distortion and the absence of context when you see the words on a tweet or written down, as opposed to actually listen to the full audio clip from Webber. My take on that was that if you listen to the actual clip, when he's asked directly about the brand of football being boring, two things. Firstly, he's quite clear that he openly acknowledges that the business they're in is winning games of football, and to do that you have to score goals. And by no measure are they trying to hide from the fact that they've failed on both of those counts too often this season. So they know where the problems are as much as any Norwich fan, pro or anti Webber and Farke. So in that sense, we're all on the same page, is my take on it. And then the second thing, if you listen to the clip again, he's quite clear. He's talking specifically about the first half of the Bolton game, where we were there, and by no exaggeration, Norwich could have been 5-6 up at half time. Big time, yeah. They didn't, and obviously that flows into the fact that the top end of the pitch isn't right, whether that's personnel or the mindset or the speed they're playing at in the final third. They didn't happen. The game finished 0-0, and of course that's one more drab performance overall. Okay, yes, they were good in the first 45. So for me, I think Stuart Webber's comment regarding the style of play was very specifically, if you didn't like what you saw in that first half at Bolton, then maybe you need to go and look at a different club and watch it. I don't think the way I've seen it spun in some quarters on social media is he's basically dismissing the Norwich fan base en masse and saying, you go and watch a different football club. That isn't my take on it at all.
It wasn't an aggressive comment at all. It was quite an innocent comment, as you've explained. Yeah. To spin that in the wrong way, if you listen to it, is very disingenuous, very scurrilous too. You know, and there are people out there who will be, I'll have a go at him for this. It's a bit silly.
But ultimately, Chris,
probably you shouldn't have said it, frankly.
No, I suppose in hindsight you wouldn't say the phrase anyway if you knew it was going to be taken out of context and filtered through social media. But also, it's coming against the backdrop of 1 win in 10. They've just lost 4-1 at QPR. There's a lot of pent-up frustration there.
Well, it's this credit again with the fans.
Yes, exactly.
You've got to be careful. You don't want to take any of the credit away yourself, deliberately. Yeah. I think Stuart was probably in a little bit of a corner there. I don't suppose he was 100% comfortable answering all the questions there. I mean, if you're in charge of a football team and the first question is, people say you're boring, please respond.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've seen the league table. You have 42 goals, is it?
Is it as many as that, Dave?
I just happened to have written it down earlier for a column I was writing. 42 goals in 40 games.
42 goals.
Now, I just sort of having this automatic reverse into Paul Lambert mode here. And I know it was a different era, but it was when I was really working every week. Now, Lambert's team, when he took over that season from Brian Gunn, 89 goals, conceded 47.
The League One title win season. Yeah.
When they went up to the Premier League the following season, 83 goals and 58 conceded. At the moment, 42 goals and 50 conceded. You don't have to have a calculator. You don't have to work it out to the percentage or anything.
Yeah.
That's rubbish figures.
Yeah.
This year, absolutely dreadful. 42 goals in 40 games.
Okay, yeah. I agree.
You know, it's not great.
Yeah, Dave, let's get your take on it. You know, the whole Stuart Webber comments and Chris's points, which are quite valid about clearly there's a lack of goals in this team.
Well, you can add to that. Last season was 86 goals, and we've just got a comment in here. We'll get through a few comments in a minute. But Rachel Carter says, "Bring back Alex Neil. Neil was much better than Daniel. Sorry, but it's true." I mean, if you want to talk about goals, 86 goals were scored last season. Okay, Alan Irvin's little stint at the end of the season boosted that. But yeah, I think if Norwich had won on Monday, then we wouldn't be talking about Stuart's comments as. And we know that is Webber's style. He doesn't like to pull his punches. He likes to be quite direct about things, doesn't he? And to be frank, he said similar comments at the AGM, at the supporters AGM, at several interviews. He often sort of takes the bull by the horns and says these things, but it all boils down, like Chris says, to the goals. Averaging about a goal a game is barely good enough to keep you in the division, let alone to have any chance of success. So you look at those draws at Bolton, like we say, they should have been at least 4-0 up in that game. Yeah. Bristol City, despite how well they've done this season, earlier in the season, they should have been well up in that game that finished 0-0 as well. If they'd have just turned a few, 3 or 4 of those home draws into wins with one goal, you know, you're talking about 4 goals being the difference between Norwich still being in the playoff race and being completely meandering in nowhere at the moment. So that's very simply, but that's so Norwich City, isn't it? Couldn't defend last year. This year they can just about defend, but now they can't score enough goals. So will Daniel find the right mix next year?
I think this is where we have the issue. The crux of the issue is that there are an awful lot of people trusting the people in charge at Caro to get it right. And there's a lot of goodwill at the moment, which is being eroded, but the goodwill is saying, OK, we'll give you that, give them enough rope, not to hang themselves, but to give them enough rope to help for next season, and they think it's going to work. And you know, it's the power of positive thinking here, but there's a lot of negatives coming in. I mean, you saw the email that I received this week that we won't be repeating, but you know, this is a man who believes there are 28,000 people at every game, incorrect, but who are very, very angry at things. And okay, it's probably not typical, but I think there are more people who are not as optimistic as they were. Well,
that's purely because they're not being given a reason to be optimistic.
They can't see it. They can't see the end.
I mean, the nature of being a football supporter, and probably to the media, is everything is short term, and everything is filtered through the last 5-10 games or whatever.
Well, when a manager lasts 4 games or 4 months, that is proof that football is immediate. You don't give people you don't say here's a year. It just doesn't happen. You can't waste a season.
But ultimately, again, anybody inside that club wouldn't disagree. You look at the season, and it's peak, trough. The level of consistency isn't there. And if there was a flatter line, then I think we wouldn't be probably having these debates about style of football, because people could see definitively, yep, okay, I can see what they're trying to do there. Okay, it needs tweaking in 1 or 2 areas. It probably needs another transfer window or 2, but you can see where they're going, what they're trying to get to. Yeah. That isn't the case at the minute, and nobody can defend that, because 1 win in 10 at this stage of the season. Said to Dave, you know, they've got beat 4-1 at QPR on Monday. Same result at Millwall, 4-1, and they were as abject defensively. But the difference is Millwall was 4 weeks into the season. You know, you could almost accept that performance and result because
you knew things were
because you would have thought in a different way. Exactly. By this stage of the season, you can't accept that as easily.
But Fulham beat them, a good side, Fulham, no doubt.
Fulham
about
are a
that.
good side, yeah.
I mean, some players there you jump all over. I mean, Tom Kearney, what a fine footballer, and Session. There's so many of them. Monday, there's a guy who out-muscled them, who a couple of years ago was saying, Matt Smith, great player, really like him, but I can run faster than him. But he's very good in the air. So what happened? They let him be very good in the air. Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous that they got done by Matt Smith.
I think he was pumped up, though, as well, and the similarity...
Norwich be pumped up, for goodness sake. They were done on Friday. You can't have 2 games where you're done. Yeah. Is it something about West London clubs or something?
It's difficult to make Christoph Zimmerman and Grant Hanley look small, because they are big boys, aren't they? But Smith bullied them. And
but there should have been a way to stop him. You should have been in the psyche to stop him, and they didn't.
Well, to reflect the Millwall game, I remember that being the early stages of the season and being worried about it, because players like Mario Vrancic and even Daniel at that point didn't know the Championship. They didn't. I remember Daniel joking about, I've been told what to expect at the Den. He didn't know what to expect at the Den, because they are brilliant at home. And if they somehow go up to the Premier League, I guarantee you all those big clubs will be terrified again the next year.
They're brilliant everywhere at the moment, Millwall.
Well, quite. And where did that all start? Carrow Road in January.
Yeah,
they haven't lost it. I think we should probably get into the comments, mate. Yeah.
I mean, this ties into it, to be honest. Sean Holman says QPR are lower than us. That means they're worse than us over 40 games. To lose 4-1 to them was a disgrace, really. But the players are on the beach already. Since Oliveira fell out with Daniel, he has hardly scored. He couldn't stop scoring before that. I mean, timeline maybe a little bit off slightly there. But yeah, I mean, Nelson just doesn't look like he looks like he doesn't want to be here. Daniel's comments in public have pretty much put distance between them. I don't think Nelson looks part of the team. I mean, there was a prime example second half on Monday. Josh Murphy skins his fullback, gets to the byline, looks up. Where's Nelson Oliveira? In the middle of all the bodies, not running towards the near post, not finding space, just not gambling like a striker should be. And I felt a little bit sorry for Josh at that point as he pulled back the cross and he looked stupid. But really, what was the option being offered to him?
Well, to be honest, on that point, I mean, Daniel, again, I distinctly remember after the Fulham game, Good Friday, he spoke in the sense of anticipation. You have to anticipate that the ball's coming in. I think he referenced there was that flowing move, wasn't it, against Fulham, where there was 15 or 20 passes. It ended up with Pinto. He puts the ball across, low cross, along the 6-yard box. There's not one yellow shirt reacting and anticipating that the ball's going to go to... So, to me, that's not a great sign for the Shrebenis of this world. And Oliveira's the same as well. You're too reactive. You need to be far more proactive. Grant Holt...
Got to gamble.
What inside the box, he might not have looked a footballer, but inside that penalty area, he anticipated and he was there and he was ahead of the defender. And
very intelligent.
Now the question is, if you can't coach that from this set of players, then you need to go into the market and find those type of players.
What's disappointing is that you look at players and think, I like the look of him, he's done that well. Then you think, why didn't you do that? I probably very unfairly spoke to somebody earlier and mentioned Jamal Lewis. And a lovely footballer, got bags of promise, give him a chance to learn. I felt that he sort of put the brakes on a few times on Friday. And I thought, well, why can't take your man on? But he did a John Otzema boy, gets up to the halfway line, stop, pass it inside. Yeah. And he didn't want to, he didn't have an attacking head on him. But I think he's probably got that. So, I'd not like to see players stifled. Yeah. I think there are players there who are probably better than they're showing. And if that's the case, it's probably coming down to what they're being told. And again, Murphy, poor lad, when he walks out on a football pitch, he's waiting for the moans and groans. Nobody's helping him. The moaners and groaners ain't helping him. He's a young man who's learning, and you learn by your mistakes. They're not giving him a chance to learn by his mistakes. He'll go. He'll go and be handed out of this place if they do that. And he's got something about him. Just let him do it. Let him make mistakes. He was still as dangerous as anybody on Friday.
Well, to be honest, I mean, at QPR in that first 30 minutes, most of the danger was coming from him, wasn't it?
And his stats stack up fairly well this year. I mean, I think you've probably got a point there, Chris, that if Josh had an opportunity to leave, I don't think he'd feel he owes Norwich City too much more. I think, 100 apperances.
I do understand frustrations.
Yeah,
but
it's the same with wingers.
You've got to understand the lad himself, young boy. Don't get onto him.
Okay. Well, plenty of comments flowing in. So, Neil Austin, Premiership prices delivering League One performances. I mean, probably fair enough. Whether those season ticket prices will be able to hold if they continue as a Championship mid-table team, we'll have to see in the future. Stephen Taylor had the fortune of switching my PC off at 2-1 on Friday. Monday, I'm guessing that is. Stephen. That hasn't happened for a long while. So, yeah, he's probably timed that pretty well. That second half was pretty painful, wasn't it, Pad?
Was pretty painful, mate, yeah.
Martin Cardo, Chris, bang on with you getting value for money. Not only that, we got very wet as well, by the way. Where was the let's play every match as though it was a cup game approach?
Yeah, well, again, it's a lot of football, a lot of sport is played between the ears. And if you are a manager who can get your players tuned perfectly for a game, you'll get a better performance. And I don't know if they're going out with that right attitude. I mean, they only play 46 times a year. You know, every one of those games should be really special. And the cup final, you shouldn't have to. You know, there's 26,000 people there. You shouldn't have to get up for a game. You know, I bet Ewan Roberts never needed an arm round his shoulder. Come on, Ewan, do well today, because I know what Ewan would have done.
Well, Mark Hayhoe basically agrees with you there on the question of motivation. How about playing for a club you love and want to win for? It's not enough these days. Is that not enough these days? Oh, and throw in a silly wage? No. Mark Hawes, we've needed a striker for the last 2 seasons. I think he's missed a word off there, but I think he means seasons. That's going to be an interesting one this summer, isn't it? If Nelson were to go, then...
Well, I was going to say, if we hypothesise that Oliveira goes and then you've let Jerome go in January, so you've basically got a still very raw third-tier German striker as your main man. You know, we're seeing what they're doing underneath that in the academy. This lad Bloomfield is coming from Dagenham, Abrahams, Fonku, younger lads Spyro and Ida, who you've seen a lot of, Carlton Morris. But there again, in theory, in the pecking order as it stands, they're below Shrebeni, and Shrebeni is nowhere near the finished article. So if Nelson does go, that is absolutely imperative. But my fear is, and you see it every window, the top prices are for the strikers, because they, as Norwich are finding out to their cost this season, are what make the difference from a mid-table mediocre type of season to actually pushing into the top 6, or at least challenging for the top 6. So the emphasis on Norwich to bring in strikers is obvious. Can they get in decent strikers for, let's be honest, the finances which are not going to be anywhere near they have been?
They're not going to get a decent striker for the finances they appear to be offering.
Depends what market, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah,
depends what market. And certainly in the English market, you're a Peterborough fan, we know that. I mean, the boy Marriott, he's banging them in for fun in League One.
No, rubbish.
Well, what is he? What's he? I mean, apparently McAntony turned down £7.5 million bids in January. But Norwich can't afford anywhere near that.
No, but they can't afford that. But they still didn't get a striker in January. Really, they didn't get enough strikers. Enough striking reinforcement in January. They are woefully short.
Yeah.
Of people up front, and it's all very well saying the goals.
Those stats you quoted earlier, that tells you.
But if you're planning a team, you don't leave yourself short. You know, if you've got a squad of players, you don't say, "All right, we've got all these. Oh, we've got a tiny little strike force." That's a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big mistake. Yeah. And if you can only afford to pay $1 million, you've got to get him from the conference or National League. That's what you do. But they didn't even do that.
Yeah.
What would be interesting is how much they'd be willing to spend on a striker. I mean, if you sell Maddison for these huge figures that we're talking about, will they see fit to invest, $5 million on one striker? That doesn't seem particularly likely, I would have thought, with the finances.
Can't see it.
Remember that stage when they had all the number 10s? You had your Maddison, Houlihan, Pritchard, Naismith we were told was a number 10, even though I always thought he was a striker when he arrived from Everton, but apparently he was a number 10.
Yeah, I'm pleased you did. There's 2 of us.
Never, hardly ever saw him play as a striker at Norwich, did we? I mean,
can I just see there? I saw him and Lafferty playing for Hearts. They were on Sky on Easter Sunday, I think. They were at Dundee. Oh, that level of football, I'm sorry. And he wasn't even standing out at that level of football.
Oh, dear.
I don't want to be disrespectful, but that was abysmal. That was lower than League 2 level, that.
While we're on it, I watched the highlights from Aberdeen's game last night, because Kenny McLean, an assist and a goal in that. And it was pouring with rain, to be fair, but the level of control of the ball and the quality of the defending, only in highlights, it didn't look good, to be fair. It definitely looked League One standard at best.
Yeah, I think we'll get a few more comments there. Dave Matthew Johnson, I think he hits the nail on the head for me there.
Matthew Johnson, yeah.
Is that one there, yeah?
So talking about Webber, which obviously we were earlier, I mean, Ian Michael says, why is the fat Stuart Webber telling fans to go support another club when talking to Rob Butler not being reported in the media? I mean, that's not true. It's been talked about at length.
I think we've just had a conversation for the last 20 minutes about that, haven't we?
We've just done that.
Tell anybody to go and support another club.
No,
this is what we're saying. This is what we're saying.
He really didn't listen to it.
It's taken one chunk of the quote, and Anyway, so Matt Johnson, Webber did an interview. This covers it nicely as well. Webber did an interview days before the Radio Norfolk one. In that one, he basically said the same things, just worded them better. Yeah. He said, if fans want hoofball, I'm off. In the Radio Norfolk one, he used Bolton. I was thrilled. The amount of chances in the first 45 minutes, but most fans won't remember that. It's gone. So maybe choosing Bolton was a poor choice of words. Yeah. Other than that, it was pretty much on point. And that is Stuart, isn't it? He doesn't hide from things. And I remember right back in his first press conference, when he arrived from Huddersfield, he said, it looks silly this season, of course, but he said, I won't be appointing someone like Neil Warnock to play long ball. Of course, Neil Warnock's come back. He's at Cardiff. He's done brilliantly. Stuart probably didn't expect that, but he is always that's been his line, and they're sticking to it. He may end up being wrong. We may get another year down the line. Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber haven't been successful, and the club has to look at it again. But at this point, the club always set out their stall, didn't they, and said it's going to take a bit of time. Stuart set out his stall and said it's going to take a bit of time, and people either buy into it or they don't.
I'll tell you, just on that point. I mean, I was listening to TalkSport a couple of days ago, and it was basically a phoning around the West Brom situation, Paddy, you having just gone. And pretty much to a man, woman and child, every West Brom fan who rang in to that show was saying, we don't want to keep going down the tried and trusted route. We want a fresh start. We want to develop our own players. This merry-go-round of experienced managers who talk a good game but don't deliver, we want to get away from it. And basically everything that you were hearing was the road Norwich have tried to go down. Now, as we're saying, it hasn't probably catched and accelerated to the degree we would all like to have seen by this stage of the season, but you can't really fault them for actually trying something different. Obviously, the financial backdrop to this has probably necessitated they go in a different direction, but it was still a brave call to go and get a sporting director, then go and get an overseas coach. The massive turnover of players as well, to commit to youth. Now we're seeing it with this academy bond and the facilities that they want to do there. But all of these things take time, and that's the hard part in all of this at the minute, is that we keep getting told it's a work in progress, but there's not a lot that we're seeing in the shop window, as I wrote about earlier in the week, in the last 10 games.
It's a little bit difficult when the man pays his money at the gate.
That's what I'm saying.
To get in, and you're not delivering, you're saying, it'll come soon. It'll come soon. Just wait.
That's what I'm saying, Chris.
The balancing act is not tilting, I don't think, in the fans' favour at the moment.
No, I agree. I agree.
There's only so long you can wait, and I think, I wouldn't say they're being shortchanged, but I think you're really risking it here. I mean, we've seen a certain club's attendances go down. We don't want to see that in Norwich, because Norwich is famous for its high attendances and good quality of supporters, and it's a great ground. We all love it. But there is a danger that things might go a little bit pear-shaped if they're not careful.
Well, I mean, ultimately, you've seen the reaction after the QPR game, and there might have been a little bit of misinformation in terms of the context of things that have been said and what have you, but setting that aside, on the pitch as well, when 1800 was there at Loftus Road,
great following.
in pouring rain on a bank holiday, they've gone down to London, and then they see that in the second half, total capitulation. That is going to bring a lot more heat on the Webbers and the Farkers, a lot more than any sound bites or how they've been misconstrued. So I agree completely with you. On the pitch, by no stretch is that good enough, and that we need to see something between now and the end of the season that suggests that it can turn. Yeah,
you need those away fans who went to QPR need not see a 4-1 ever again. They don't want capitulation. They'll accept a 4-1 if their players come off there absolutely shattered because they've tried everything they could. They'll be more accepting of that.
Or you've come up against the Fulham, for example, a really top draw operator in the Championship, which QPR by no stretch are.
But you've got to show. I wouldn't say they're not showing respect to fans, but that is your bread and butter. Those away fans are ridiculous. A lot of clubs have fans like Norwich who had fantastic away support, and you've got to look at each and every one of them and not lose one.
To be fair, I think the attention turned on Daniel a bit in the second half as well, didn't it, with the lack of substitutions. The only one that came on was Jamal Lewis for James Husband at left back, and point here from Barry Newman. He's made a couple, so I'm going to have to sum them up, I'm afraid, Barry, because they're a bit long. But key is plan B, C and D, ability to switch tactics to game opposition, maybe learning season, and in summer, who knows, we may get off to a flyer and confidence builds. Need a regular settled team. Farker does like squad rotation. And I mean, a lot of people obviously talking about next season at the moment. No one has a crystal ball. No one knows. We don't know what they're going to do in the transfer market. We don't know who's going to be injured, who's going to be fit. We can have a good guess, but once Daniel's got a squad that he's happier with, maybe with a, your Naismiths, your Martins are gone full time, Wildskut, maybe Oliveira, you cashed in on Maddison. He's tweaked that squad a bit more. Stuart Webber, to be fair, he's put himself on a pedestal to a certain extent because he's preached about planning ahead and planning window to window. Yeah. So, if his plans come to fruition and they've got the squad much more where Daniel wants it at the start of the season, then who knows? This style of football may work.
Yeah. I think, we'll take maybe one or two more comments, mate. We'll stay around for another 10 minutes. 10 minutes to kick off, people. 10 minutes to kick off.
Terry Wright says Farker had similar goals ratio in Germany. Mark Hawes, Arsenal away, we should have been 3 up at half time. That may be a tad optimistic, but yeah, they played well that night, didn't they?
They did.
We've been talking about the 3 at the back as well, haven't we, quite a bit? And
we should briefly touch on that debate. We don't need to go into it too deeply, but ultimately, this switch to the 4, you have to say, looking at it, they look far more vulnerable. As I think I quoted at the outset, 13 goals conceded in the last 5 games. Clearly, you could argue, and I'd accept that if you look at the goals against QPR, that wasn't directly down to the system. That was more about losing your individual duels. But you just do feel that as a 3, they're far more solid, and the results bear that out. I saw the stats you put out there, and I think the points per game ratio is going to probably, I worked it out, you'd be 7 or 8 points better off over the course of a 46-game season with a 3 than a 4.
It was closer than I expected, though.
Yeah,
I thought that maybe 3 at the back would have been a bit more productive, but I suppose all the draws maybe. But they've looked secure, that's the thing, isn't it?
Of course, the flip side of that, and the reason he's veered away from the 3, obviously there's been 1 or 2 injury issues, but they wasn't looking like they could embellish the defensive platform with an attacking edge, and so he obviously wanted to get Hernandez in the side, Josh Murphy, move him slightly more to the left, get Maddison in an offensive position, and it felt there for a little period of time that the 3 didn't then allow you to be as creative as you needed to be in the final third. So in trying to then mix it up at the top end of the pitch and going to a 4 at the back, they've now, it's both ends of the pitch now where there's causes for concern. So that's frustrating as well, because it did feel that, as you said, Chris, we'd got away from the QPR type, Millwall type defensive displays, and to see it of late is, again, it feels like a backward step.
Yeah, you play to your strengths, and to me, if you've got a 5 at the back and you've got Lewis and Pinto, you've got a bit of pace there, you've got a bit of imagination. I don't think Pinto's the world's greatest defender, so the further I see him out the middle of that defence or anywhere near it, the happier I'd be. But, again, if you go with a forward thinking, if you go and say, right, we're going to go out in this game and take it by the scruff of the neck, if you take a negative thought, well, I don't think it does you much good having a Pinto on the right and a Lewis on the left. It's no use if they're going to hang back. But if they were a bit more adventurous without being reckless, then I think the 5 works lovely. And you to be honest with you, it's quite obvious that the 3 at the back, the 3 central defenders works much better.
All I would add on that, Dave, will get a final thought from you on that one, is that the 3 at the back would work if you had, and again, it feels like we're repeating ourselves, you had a guy at the top end of the pitch who could score goals. Supplemented by pace either side.
Yeah.
If you had somebody in the team who, as they did Brentford, I'll throw that one in there, where they had their backs to the wall at Griffin Park for long spells, Maddison got a goal and they hung on. But if you'd had a guy at the top end of the pitch, because they had plenty of counter opportunities that day, didn't they, in the second half particularly, if you had a guy at the top end of the pitch who could convert, then we wouldn't really probably be having this debate, because they clearly, it feels with this set of players defensively, it's a 3 all day long. If you look at the record and the security that they give Angus Gunn, but unfortunately they haven't had that goal potential at the top end of the pitch. So
should we start a Bring Back Laughs campaign?
Bring back laughs?
Yeah, why not?
I don't think he'd be the answer, mate.
Okay. It's just a thought.
Not from what I saw against Dundee the other day.
I think
It's always good for a story, frankly.
He is indeed.
the thing with that shape, which is generally 3-4-3, is that it doesn't really suit Maddison that well.
Yeah, it's a fair
And
point.
to be fair to Daniel, I think he's tried quite a lot, hasn't he? You know, he tried Watkins up with Oliveira. I don't think we've really seen Oliveira and Shrubeni much, maybe other than just in late spells.
Yeah.
Josh Murphy, it hasn't worked out as a striker. I think I'd almost like to still see Murphy and Hernandez either side of Shrubeni in that shape, and then maybe have Teti and Vrancic perhaps for this Saturday with the options available. Clearly, with Tribal and Leitner, that would give you a bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
But which is that's probably been a big thing for this weekend as well. Those two being out has limited the midfield options, because I said it in the team news video, didn't I? Straight away, should we be worried that it's Reed and Vrancic in the midfield? Because to me, that's not a well-balanced midfield duo. But talking about Maddison, Martin Cardo says, without Maddison in this side, we would be extremely mediocre, not enough passes going forward, most backwards or sideways. Neil Austin, any optimism is fading, lads, simple. In Honeyman, I think the aim this season, knowing the cuts they had to make, was to stay up any way they could. Sorry, my cursor moved just at the wrong moment then. Robin Collins, similar. Without Maddison's goals, we would be bottom 3 this season.
To stay up any way they could. That was the aim this season, to stay up.
Well, I guess
when you look at some of the clubs in that division, that's a worrying thing, isn't it? That Norwich City's intention was just to stay up because of the cuts.
And I think that's where a lot of the frustration's coming from a lot of people, isn't it? It's like, where's the ambition? But I think Steve Stone, Stuart Webber, Daniel Farker, they've all said, yeah, we want to be in the Premier League. Of course they do. Everyone wants them to get back to the Premier League. They want to get promoted. You want to have that fun, don't you? But they haven't shouted it from the rooftops this season, have they? Because I think they just had to be sensible. I think most people knew that promotion this year. I mean, I predicted 8th. I don't think many of us predicted a promotion place, did we, at the start of the season?
Because you don't look a mug when they're below it, really. You don't look arrogant. You know,
no, I went safe. Top 10. I even sat more on the fence than that.
They won't be relegated.
Well, I was wrong. I don't think they're going to finish 8th. So
more top 10 now.
Yeah, so that's disappointing.
Right, boys.
We haven't done Mick yet.
Mick?
Are we going to do any Mick? No.
Mick.
Well, there's got to be something about Mick this week, isn't it? No.
What, Mick McCarthy?
Yeah, there's only one Mick.
Who's died, apparently, isn't it?
Yeah, a little of him.
Is he still in charge?
He said a little of him has died, and I was quite sad.
You were quite sad?
Yeah, I thought it sounded quite sad.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I don't know if Barry Newman's comment is one on Mick or not, but laughing emoji. Right, I'll tell you what. Unless there's any comments you want to get through there, DF, I can hear the Champions League music. So
there are a lot of comments, so we're not going to get through.
Yeah, apologies. Unfortunately,
we need to keep some kind of structure to it, don't we? But Martin Cardo says not enough leaders on the pitch.
Yeah, true. Not one.
Rachel Carter, why do we let Jerome go and keep Oliveira? Jerome loyal, gives his all, doesn't complain. As for Oliveira, doesn't want to be here. Well, that was a difficult one. Jerome was awful at Bolton when they lost 2-1, wasn't he? And didn't play great all season, to be honest. And he was getting on a bit, so they got a bit of money for him. So you could say it's fair enough. Whereas with Oliveira, remember, Swansea bid 12 million for him last summer.
It won't be 20 this summer, I'll tell you.
Not million.
I think I think there was a certain extent of trying to keep value up so that they could actually sell him for what he's worth, but they're going to struggle to get much for him at the moment, aren't they?
I used to do that with an old Fiesta of mine, Ford Fiesta. Sort of lost thousands.
Shoot. Go on, mate, any more?
Oh, this is sacrilege. Chris Hipkin, why are people always going on about Grant Holt? He's gone now and we should look to the future. I mean, he's bang on, but...
It's a comparison.
Yeah,
that's all it is. I'm not suggesting Grant Holt
but
comes
it also
back.
underlines that the current crop are,
it's a comparison. It worked when he was here. Having somebody with the same enthusiasm, leadership skills, that's what we'd like. Oh, good Lord.
Matthew Johnson, Murphy isn't a young man anymore. I'm not the kind of person who would boo any player in an NCFC shirt, but he isn't a young boy. Yeah, he's 23. It's a fair point, but as we said a bit earlier, I think you get this with wingers, don't you? Redmond got it. It may just be their proximity to the crowd. They can hear what people are saying.
Still, I'd say 23 is reasonably young. For football, I'm not jesting.
I mean, this has been his first full, as in week in, week out.
Yeah, it's not the age, it's the inexperience, rather, should we say. Then.
Billy Pointer, Murphy can't cross a ball. Is this due to training or that he's still a young boy after over 100 appearances? Again, I mean, he's a player that sort of divides people a little bit, isn't he?
Yeah,
I think.
I do understand the frustrations with him. I just think you give him a break.
Okay. I think Anthony Miles, I think Josh still misses his brother. Billy, again, I hope and pray that we do not let the players who are currently on loan this season go on loan next. We need them hungry lads, which probably seems a decent forward-looking point to finish on.
I mean, ultimately, because we're filtering it through this period, and it is doom and gloom a little bit, but ultimately, as you say, there's irrespective of Maddison moves on, which everything's pointing to that being the case. You've bloodied Jamal Lewis, Ben Godfrey, and to a lesser extent Morris are ripping it up. Remy Matthews is doing well. You can see certainly in terms of the youth commitment that is quite clearly there, but that's not going to be enough. Farker himself said you can't win points in the Championship with 18-year-olds, and I think if he knows that, ultimately certainly in the Championship they're going to need. And I think, okay, it might not be the scale of turnover last summer, but in every other respect, it's going to be just as important that they do the right business, because I think it's safe to say now, you look at the table, you look at the form line, this set of players aren't going to be good enough to get themselves in and around the top 6 next season. So it all hinges on the summer for me again. And if we can, as I say, if we can get to that point, having picked up a few positive results along the way, then there'll be a bit more positivity around the place.